extest.unidata.ucard.edu, and then site is a three-letter WFO identifier. It's defaulting to UW folder, which is where Unidata is located, but we can enter any valid WFO.
OAX is the default for a lot of the development and testing releases from Raytheon because they're located out there in Omaha. Okay, so there's a validate button that you click and you'll see the text turn green if it does successfully connect, or red if you are having trouble connecting or if the address is typed incorrectly. And the application.
So it really doesn't matter what site we pick. I'll be able to do the same things if you want to standardize on one.
Yeah. So the idea of this WFO site ID tied to a cave client is because at every WFO, they obviously are most interested in their area of responsibility. Places like the national centers that ends up is responsible for, they are more interested in a broad CONUS view or global view, whereas the WFOs are interested in a local view. So this has been a challenge for Unidata, is to modify the AWIPS program to be more general and global and less tied to a specific region, but there still are a lot of components of the software that are tied to a specific domain. But for this workshop, it really doesn't matter. So when Cave loads up, we have a CONUS view. Notice the top bar is the Cave D2D OAX. That's the site that I entered in. If you entered in a different three-letter identifier, you'll see that show up. But there should be no visual differences between BOU, OAX, or any other site. Did that load okay for everybody? Okay. Please stop me. Don't let me get ahead. There's a lot to cover here. What we're seeing is called D2D. It stands for display two dimension. It is the new Java Eclipse version of the old AWIPS 1 system. This is essentially like a Google Earth sort of application where we can use the mouse wheel to scroll in and out. We can click and drag to pan it around. And we have a default Northern Hemisphere polar stereographic projection. It's a little tough to see up here. Hopefully it looks all right for you guys. So there's a primary toolbar at the top of the application that at the top left we have where it says CONUS is our map projection. That's our default view. And then a number of widgets and tools. And above that, after sort of the file view options and tools menus that are standard in the application are the data menus, such as models, surface, NSUB hydro, so on and so forth. So this is the primary method that we're loading data, that we make data available to the user and load it into the client. What you'll notice, if you did use OAX, you should see a few different radar sites show up as there are menu items. If you use a different three-letter identifier, you'll either see different radars or no radars, because this is one of those configurations that's tied to that WFO that you've localized to. So for OAX, what it does is make the OAX level 3 radar menu available right there up top. We'll get further into this and explain it in more detail as we go. So top left, the map scales. See that all? Yep. So there's a few different regional views. There's a few local views that are tied to the WFO that we specified, in this case Omaha. If I switch to regional or WFO, the third and fourth one down on this menu, then we would get either a upper Midwest centered around Nebraska for regional, or a very close-in view of the Omaha area of responsibility with the WFO scale. There's also a lot of regional scales and a few global scales, including Mercator, cylindrical, equidistant, Almighty, and it goes east full disk, which is new for 17.1. Looks really cool. It goes 16 data. There's also a submenu down at the bottom that is pretty lengthy, but it's every single WFO. As this application is delivered from Raytheon, it is not possible to switch from, say, your Omaha localization local map to a Boulder or a Wisconsin, I don't know what WFO is.
MKX,
MKX?
Yeah.
What's the
Milwaukee,
Milwaukee,
Sullivan.
okay. There is no way to jump around to these local views at a WFO because it doesn't matter. Somebody in Milwaukee is not going to be looking at Boulder. However, we will look at as many areas as we can. So we've made all these WFO maps available. This is like Birmingham, Alabama. Nope. Binghamton, New York, right? Right. So all these local views are available, and these are the exact same maps that would be tied to your standard WFO local map, depending on how you localize. So, all right. Do these widgets up here, clear button, self-explanatory, but it's going to wipe all the data off the map once we load data. It's very easy just to clear the view. Next to that is image properties, where once we have images loaded, this widget will become more active, and we can, or visible. It will be enabled and visible, and we can adjust brightness, contrast, transparency, image interpolation, color maps, things like that. Next to that is a toggle for panning the map. So if this is disabled, you are no longer able to click and drag that map around. So you just use static, where the mouse wheel and panning will no longer affect. So during this workshop or any other time you're using Page, you find that this happens sometimes. I think there's a keyboard shortcut that can enable and disable this pan button. Yeah, the map isn't moving in and out. Just check that button up top. All right, and next to that is the time display, and it defaults to valid time sequence. What this means is the system is going to determine when you load, say, METAR, it's going to determine the latest valid time sequence to load. In most cases, that's going to be the latest available data. But we can also specify for, say, model runs, we can go back to the previous run, which is just run back from the latest available previous valid time sequence. We can do inventory, which is pretty helpful for looking at, say, archive data or just slightly older data without loading the entire time frame up to current. And then there's some looping controls, stepping forward and back, going to first and last frame, and then looping. And then next to that is looping properties, which determines a forward and backward speed and dwell the first and last frame. Next to that, we've got the default number of frames, which is 12, is selectable up to 500. It is not advisable to load very high resolution data with 500 frames, especially things like those are, so just be careful because there is no memory limit on these machines. And then after that are a few plugins that are made available on this toolbar, such as WarnGen, NC Data, which is sort of a Genpack visualization of image data, and then Browser. So if you click Browser, it will open on the side, and it's essentially a tree view of all of the data that the remote EDX server has made available to us. These are the same data that we can access through the top menu: model, surface, hydro, upper air, satellite, radar. This was originally a developer's tool that they wanted to remove from the system, but found very useful. I think it's a great idea that they left it in because it lets you go in and investigate all of the group parameters that are available in the system. Not all of the group parameters are made available in the bundles through the menus. So for example, up in models, we have a standard set of models that cover a lot of CONUS and global coverages, plus some mesoscale models, the RTMA, URMA, the NDFD. This is not the complete set of models that are available on the index server. In order to see the complete set, we open up this product browser on the right side and notice under grid how many models are available. There's quite a bit, but you'll also notice that there's some what look like duplicates. So these flash flood guidance grids are sectioned off by river forecast center, so there's many of those. The HFR grids are the high frequency radar for ocean wave heights. And again, those are regionalized. So you can see these names for like Central California, West Coast, Washington, Southern California. Multi-sensor precipitation estimation, I think, are again localized to river forecast centers. There's a few of those that show up. And QPE as well. What mixed in with those are the standard models, such as the 3 domains of the RAP, RTMA, URMA, GFS, and NAM. So the way the system works is configuration files on the server are going to determine the default display for each of these parameters. And so just opening these up and double-clicking any of these fields, you'll see, say, 24-hour accumulation precipitation, and it gives you the name of the parameter, TP24HR. After that, we have the vertical level, in this case, just ground or water surface. And just double-clicking on that is going to load up a wireframe contour of that specific field, right? Now, if we hold right-click, so here we're going to get into a little bit of how the menus work and what we can do with the mouse. There's a couple of, it's a right-click, and it'll pop up and it'll say load as contour or image. The default, when we just double-click that field, is going to load up as a contour. It can also load as an image through this interface. And that is since this is a precipitation field, there is a color map configuration on the server side, which is determining the color values and the scale for this precipitation. So it's not coloring anything below, I guess, like 0.01, just because we don't want to see So at the bottom of the window, what you should see is, say, a timestamp, possibly the grid name, grid parameter name. This is the data stack, and every single product that we load is going to be added to this bottom right corner data stack. So if you're only seeing the timestamps, which is what we have up here in the front monitor, what we can do is just right-click anywhere in the background map, and it's going to toggle through a couple of different display options. So we just go back and forth. It's going to show just a simple timestamp, which is a right-click again, and it's going to show the 2 fields that we've loaded up. And the image is always going to be in the bottom by default, because we want the wireframe contours to be overlaid on top of the image. Each of these products in the data stack has a menu available to it if you hold right-click. This is different than just right-click on the name. Hold right-click down, and you'll see this menu pop up. So we have the name up top, and then a few different configuration options, such as color, line style, width, magnification, and density. We also have move up and move down, so this is where we can move these around on our own. However, I believe that there is a restriction on putting images on top of contours. So what we can do is, let's say, add these other grids. 2D Genesis, a number of different vertical levels. One of these, you see at the bottom right, you should see requesting grid data. I know this is really tough to see up here. Way down at the bottom right is sort of a status. It will give you an indication of what is going on. It will say requesting grid data and then contouring and whatnot. So with these three fields kind of ugly overlaid, you can then hold right click and move these, say, up and down. Now, any of these contours we can load as an image. You should see that option available up at the top. And any of the images you should see load as graphics. Although in this case, because the graphics are already loaded, it's not available. So let's count for this. All right, so right now we've got a single image plus two contours, and one of those contours is the exact same field as the image. Notice the parameter string. So this is the CMC model, the Canadian regional model, which is why the coverage cuts off down in Alabama and northern Mexico. So there's the full domain of it. And if I hold right click that middle one, which is the contour of the 24-hour accumulation, I can unload. It's the last option on the bottom. Is this difficult to see? Is this too low? Okay. So something like that.
Wait, is it possible to dim the lights slightly?
We can turn the lights off.
Wait a little bit more. Yeah. So any parameter, any field that's been loaded into the view can be unloaded with a right click on that option. Hold right click on that name and then unload like so, and there it goes. Now what I said about loading an image as a contour is, so this is 24-hour accumulation precipitation IMG. That's an image. We just left click on this, not a hold click, but just left click toggle. It's just going to toggle the view. It's an easy way to just control what is seen, right? And so the more we add, the more clutter this can get, but we can turn these on and off pretty easily with the left mouse button. Okay. So with that, that bottom layer image is the only data layer that's visible. We can load its graphics, and it's going to actually reload what we have loaded already by default contouring. So it pops it up top, and it's the same string, CMC surface 24-hour accumulation. It does not have IMG, so that's the contour, and this is right. Modify these, say down, move these down the stack, and if I have these enabled, like so, move this down, it becomes more or less visible depending on their position. It's not a Genesis. All right, so loaded the wireframe contour as green. I want to change that just because it looks so green. So holding right click again on the entering the data stack, and going up to change color. We have default values. White is at the top, which is always easy to look at. We can also go in and change it to choose color down at the bottom of this submenu. And it's just going to bring up the color palette with some of the defaults that are available, plus a selectable color palette like so. Color, I'm just going to keep that back to white. So that's how we're changing colors. We can edit the line style. Default is just going to take it from the configuration files, which for most products is going to be solid. We can also just specify some dashed line, by dash large, so on and so forth. Dash dotted, dotted, right? Similar to line style, we have submenus for line width, pixels. Change the magnification, which I don't think is going to, yeah, it doesn't change the contours, but it'll change the text labels. If we want to change the density of the contours, we have a density submenu available.
Sorry, what magic for this?
All right. So any of these products that are down in the data stack,
Yeah.
we hold the right mouse button on the name of that field, on any part of the name of the date and time string.
Okay.
And as long as you're holding down that right mouse button, that menu will appear.
Oh, on data.
Yep.
Okay.
Or the name, the entire length of that string. Now, if you just right click on that, nothing will happen. If you hold right click, it'll pop up this menu.
I'm just not seeing lines now. I see the unloaded.
This was, yeah.
Oh, I see it now. I see it.
Well, if you're on the image, you're not.
Yeah, there's slightly different menu options. So, say for this example, hold right click over an image. We're not going to be able to change line style, line width because it doesn't exist. But we can change things like color map, adjust imaging, interpolation, which is enabled by default. Toggle that toggleable option here in the right click menu. And if we unselect it, then we can see the actual grid values for that specific grid point. So we enable that. So magnification for the content is going to only change the size of the text labels, whereas density is going to change the resolution of the contours. So defaulting to 1, we just put this up to say max, and right here. Say 0.1, and just removes a lot of the clutter. So I was trying to give you guys a sense that almost every little thing involved in the display of data in this client is configurable, either through these actions that we're doing or through definitions of bundle files and default sort of product configurations.
Michael, if we've gone ahead and made some changes to the density or magnification, all of these things, and then we exited out, do these get saved?
They do
Or they do not?
They do not.
Okay, good.
So what Kevin's asking is if we're changing, say, the density and the line labels and the colors of these grids that we're messing with, if we then go reload it from either this product menu or some other method, will those changes still exist? And the answer is no.
Would you be able to like set up a file?
Yes. So there are bundles, both default bundles for the Cave client that are available through the models menu, but also we can create bundles, save what we're doing, and then reload it. So rather than loading up all of these grids through this product browser on the side, I'm just going to clear everything out now, and I'm going to load pretty much the same set of data from the models menu. So selecting, say, GFS 20 kilometers, what we'll see is a submenu with the default set of bundles that are available. And
How did you clear everything out?
there's a clear button, top left, second over.
Ah,
Yep. We could also go in and individually remove. We could go in and individually remove these with a quick right click and unload at the bottom of that product. So let's say GFS 20 surface temperature and wind. What you'll notice in this submenu is the latest available model run. So this being the 7th of June and the 0600. It's like a couple of these because of the parameters. I guess this model is still coming in. Surprisingly, that's a 0Z latest availability recent. Anyway, so for say surface temperatures and winds, go ahead and load that. This is loading a bundle file. It's an XML file that has very specific, say, color maps and contour configurations. All those things, the density, magnification, line, colors, things like that we can set manually are set in the bundle file, just to give a comprehensive view of the product. So, sorry?
Which one did you load?
I loaded the 20-kilometer GFS, surface temps, and width. Now, I'll pause right here and say if you are using the Windows or the Mac client, the WinBarbs will not load because that is a Python-derived parameter that requires client-side Python. This has been a real challenge for this. Now, they have a Windows client for weather service that is called a thin client for forecasters to use outside their office. They do not have a Mac client. Mac has been tricky because it uses a completely different version of OpenGL and OpenGL bindings for Java. It gets really hairy, but I'm working on a new release. It should be out in a few weeks. What we're using on the Linux desktops here is called 17.1.1, 2017, and essentially like January's source code. What the Mac and Windows clients are 16.2.2. So it's last year's release where these derived parameters via Python do not work fully yet. But for 17, it does. I just don't have the Mac client ready for this workshop yet. So if I zoom out enough that I can see this whole data stack down here, we can see the 4 fields that were loaded by this bundle. One of them is kind of dark. And what you notice as we zoom in is we have a image. Stack. There we go. So at the bottom of the stack, Kona surface temperature image. And then we have the wind arrows, and then I'll lighten this up again. But this dark gray one is a light gray. That's a little better. That is the contour of the background image. So that is the surface temp. These are essentially the same field, but we have an image versus the contour. So Fahrenheit, 8 degrees, 85. And then above that is mean sea low pressure field contour in white. So again, any of these products that are being displayed as a contour, we can then display as an image. In this case, if I mute by left-clicking bottom resource surface temperature image, I just click that once with the left mouse button, it'll just mute. It'll go invisible, right? And let's say hold down the right-click mouse button on that top resource, we can see the low pressure and load its image. Watch where it drops it. It drops it below its existing contour and below the wind arrows automatically. It is above the existing image, which is fine. But we do have to take into account if we have multiple images, which ones we want in the, what position we want in that data stack for the display. So the idea is that a grid can be displayed either as a contour or an image, and it's selectable in that hold right-click menu. There's a similar functionality for winds. So I'm going to mute everything here except the wind arrows, right? And let's open that same menu over here for the wind arrows and notice a couple of new options. Load as streamlines and load as wind bars. Again, this is specific to winds. Just load up both of those. So there's the barbs on top of the arrows, and they're both colored white. So I'm going to change the barbs, which is the top of the stack, slightly different color. Green, fine, just so it stands out, right? There's your difference between wind arrows and barbs. And then either of these, so it's the same data, so either of these we can load as streamlines. The third version of the same wind field is available. And I will go in and change that color as well. Say, so there are the 3 display capabilities for wind fields. Again, none of this is going to work on Mac, so I apologize. Follow on. So there was a question about how do we save any of these configurations and customizations that we're doing. Save bundles. There's a couple of ways to save bundles. So Cave, not Cave, under File, next to Cave. In that second section, we have Open Bundle, Save Bundle, and Save Bundle locally. Save Bundle, select. It's going to open a dialog. Should be nothing there. If there is, no big deal. You just simply give it a name. It's going to be an XML file that defines the products that we loaded, the view that we've given, the projection, plus the area that we're looking at, as well as all of the configurations for the different products. So this is like surface. And select OK, and that's it, right? Pretty easy. If we went to open, back under file, open bundle, you'll see that new XML file available. Just a double click, we'll load it up. Same as we're looking at now. But on this dialog, I want you to notice this button here, File, right? This is going to open up a system, a file explorer window, pretty standard on most computers. This allows you to open a bundle from the local machine. So let me slow down and explain that. This saved file, it now exists on this local computer and it exists on the cloud server, the EDX server that we connected to. Anytime that I connect with the same username, it shows me as WS 2017. I think we all have the same username in this classroom. So anytime that I connect from the same machine with the same username, I'll be able to sync those files back down to the client machine. Which means I can right away key data on this machine and move to a new machine, and as long as the login are the same. It's a little wonky because it's developed for use inside of WFO. But we should see, yeah, so show mine, show all users, and show all. I think show all is going to be the same as show all users. I'm not sure who this is. LEC. Someone has that login in this classroom. Okay, but notice this. Okay, so there's multiple files here under the same user, and I just said that we all have the same username, and this is going to be an area of conflict for us. So let me describe localization at a weather forecast office. The idea is take a site such as OAX. You have a configuration called site localization, which is everything tied to that Omaha area. Within the WFO site, you will have multiple desks. For each desk, you will have multiple workstations. For each workstation, you will have multiple users. So there's this hierarchy of localizations that diagram. There we go. Okay. 6th level is of localization, starting with the default, which we call base localization, which is just everything that is like default configuration. After that, we have region, which is generally unused. We're not going to touch on that. Site is, in this case, OAX. It's that 3-letter identifier that we entered right at the beginning. So each WFO has multiple desks. Each desk has multiple workstations, and each workstation has multiple users. So there's all this hierarchy of localization that will supersede each other. So user localization is the highest level that will supersede any level below that. We all have the same username, so this is an area of conflict if we have the ability to overwrite each other's bundles. So I saved a bundle as Surface Wind. And so other folks name these undercase Surface Wind, Wind example, some bundle, GFS Wind, right? But if somebody saved the bundle with the exact same case and name, Surface Wind, it would overwrite. So something to be aware of. It's really designed for a lab setting or a configuration where we have different user accounts.
Sorry, there's absolutely no way I can clobber these.
Sorry, say that
There'd
again.
be absolutely no way I can clobber these.
Clobber?
Clobber as in mess it up.
Oh yeah, you totally can. Yes.
Oh, that's it.
It's
By I think she said by using it though.
Oh, by using it.
By using it.
No, but
Don't say it.
But I just saved surface wind up here, and let's say a minute later, somebody in the classroom saves the
Oh,
exact same bundle,
But
same
that means
bundle
we're the
name.
same user.
Right. We are the same users,
Right,
yes.
yeah, okay, got it.
So you said that this is on the EDEX server level?
It's, yes, but it's,
So if I go, when I'm back in Albany and I open this up, I'll see WS 2017 and AC.
you will if you select show all users, right? So I've got a terminal open and I can just do a command who am I, and that shows the username WS workshop reason, right? I also say host name. And my host name is root 1411.AOS Wisconsin EDU. So the host name for all these machines are going to be unique. That's the workstation localization, which is level lower than site. Level higher than site and lower than user. So user localization will supersede workstations. But because we have unique workstation names, we're going to use that later in this workshop to edit some files and make some customizations. It's just something to be aware of, the difference between a user and a workstation name. They're all the same username in this classroom, but we have different workstation names. So back to opening and saving bundles. There is this shortcut to save bundle locally, which is just going to open up a standard file explorer dialog, and you can save the same bundle as an XML file on local disk. Let's go back to this K data that I mentioned right at the beginning, the local configuration directory. So the user's home directory on Linux is going to be // right? And K data. We have a few directories, so configuration, logs, things like that, common directories. And I believe it's in Etsy. There we go. So I did a PWD at the bottom just to show where I am. Home directory, K data, Etsy. So configured, site, user. So this Surface Winds XML that I saved through the save bundle dialog should exist in here. Simple find. Just go to user. Here's my username. Let's go. I lost it. All right, so it's up there. All right, sorry about that. Anyway, so in this user directory is parameter mapping tools. I don't want to do that yet. I thought that file would exist here, but it doesn't.
I think that I can. It's like under common user WS 2017.
There we go. Okay. Sorry, I mistyped. Man. Okay. This isn't too important. I just wanted to show that the file that we saved exists in this K data directory. I can also open up, got a terminal open to the server connected to
I have a question. At the beginning, you said something about wiping away already existing data directories. What if you save your SMS there?
Oh, I would not recommend, okay, so. Question is, let's say we save a bundle through the cave dialog, which is just naming it and saying, okay, this is not the system file explorer dialog. When we save a bundle this way, it gets synced to the cave data directory locally, plus the server.
So that you're saying that.
Right. However, we can also save, you can bypass this and just save it directly to disk. Say if you just want to email to somebody, this will not sync it to the server. So this is independent. I would recommend to never manually save a bundle to cave data, right? I would say never do anything manually in this directory. Like we're just going into the command line and looking, and that's fine. But other than just removing it to reset, I wouldn't save anything, because that won't be synced. It'll be a mismatch between what's on the server and what's on the line. So I'll put it in desktop or documents or home directory. Something. There we go. So I'm on the server now. You can see the address up here on root edex test. This is our Unidata server. And I just wanted to show where this file exists. So there's a directory called common, and then user, and then there's my username. And here is the bundle that I saved that is synced to client and server. Just wanted to show that. So clear that, say open bundle, put that back up. Yeah, it's the same. So, oh yes.
On the Unidata version, how do you remove bundles? Because it's not the regular AOS you have.
Let's see. Don't think that's available through the simple open and save bundle. There is a there's another method called procedures, which we haven't touched on yet, that does allow more robust editing of. So yeah, let's look at that. Under File Procedures, you can see options for New, Open, Delete, Copy, Display. This is very similar with some minor differences. So let's say I want to create a new procedure. It's going to open up this small dialog. It's going to be blank by default. Down at the bottom left is this button, Copy In. That'll copy in all of these data layers that are loaded in the display into that window. So the thing is, it's going to give a very long single name that is going to be every single field just appended to each other as one long, certainly long string in this case, right? And then say save, and similar dialog. We're going to call this procedure. There's some very slight differences. We'll explain as we go. Let's just call this save one. Okay. You can also do save as, which is the same thing. Save procedure, that save procedure. And we can clear and then go back into say open. That's mine. One. Now, rather than load the bundle straight to the screen, it's going to load this procedure dialog, which gives you a little bit more control over what's going on. This is going to allow you to, say, load multiple views within a bundle. The idea is like multiple bundles can be part of one procedure. Highlighting it, load same bundle that we saw. However, like I said, this absurdly long name. Look at this tab. This is ridiculous. So I would change that name to something shorter. Yeah. Just call it, say, like. Okay. save, load. There we go. We shorten that tab, the name, so it's just GFS 20 CONUS. So from this dialog, we can go in and delete bundles from a procedure.
That's not available on that.
No, I don't. Procedures, this has been new in 17.1. This is something that you won't see in the Mac file. All right, so we've been playing with a single view, a single map up to this point. And we can add more maps with that first option. It's either Control-N on the keyboard, or it's File, New Map. It's going to open another tab. This is a tab environment, so similar to any standard browser. It's going to be a list of maps up at the top. And they all start with the default code. Each of these tabs you can select and drag around. So I'm going to drag this over to the left. Also, frozen. So any of these tabs you can grab with the mouse cursor and drag to the top, bottom, left, or right, and sort of manually set up this multi-pane view. I'm not sure what's going on. I hope that didn't wasn't the same for all you.
No, I was able to
Easier to drag this around, position them.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I just see a map, and I don't see how I could change the view on the active map.
You have two tabs, or you get two tabs at first, or did I do that?
I got two tabs at first, and then I just ramped it up.
Grab it up and put it in, so that way it's-
Okay, so I first interview and say new map, and I have a second tab up here, and I can just drag this. I'm holding down the left mouse button. I can drag it over to the left, and it'll show me this wireframe like where it will drop. So that'll drop it down to the bottom. This will drop it off to the left. This will put it back. If I drag it back to the tab position, this will put it back in the same window, right? And we can modify this. We can. Any of these tabs, another way to open a new editor is just to right-click on the tab name and select New Editor. Notice there's also an option to rename the tab. Say like to New Editor. And then we can pop this one out. Say New Editor, this one out. So you see how it looks. Right?
How did you get it? I mean, you can reattach it to the main layout?
Yes. So any of these tabs, let's say I grab this one at the bottom right, and I hold the left click and I drag it up to the top, and you notice a little green indicator right next to an existing tab, so you drop it in there.
Should I expect it to hang up on me on going from one panel view to two panel view? Or just right?
Should they expect what? Sorry.
It hanged up and crashed when I chose to change the view to one panel, right panel.
Interesting. What site are you localized to? Close these out. So the question was, if I change from a default 1-pane layout to a 5-pane layout, so under View, your menu option, your menu, we have 1 and 5. By default, it's just a single pane. That 5-pane layout is what is defaulted in UW. So the question was, should it crash? And the answer is no, it should not crash, but if it did, that's unfortunate. I think it's part of, we have to accept that the Eclipse programs do crash and sometimes hang. Anyway, so this 5-pane view 5-pane, is going to have a CONUS view in the primary window, and then this left panel, it's a little bit cut off, you guys can see, has a global view, a northern hemispheric view, a regional view, and a local view. This regional and local view are tied to the site that we localize to. In my case, Omaha, OAX. So regional, Midwest, and then the area of responsibility for the OAX forecast office. We can switch between any of these side views with a simple right click. Not a hold, just a quick right click. So we'll swap out the views. And this is a pretty convenient way to load up a number of, say, data layers. So let's go ahead and load some just random data to any of these windows. I'm going to select surface temps. This is sort of a Genpack-like surface obs, right? And I can swap that out by right-click any of these over here. And what you'll notice is this is a full, fully functional animal zoomable map within that little window, and it will show our data that we loaded. It's a pretty easy way to get a lot of data on the desktop. You can just switch back and forth from. So say satellite, imager visible, you can go to the spirit view, and swap that out, and say, let's look at VTAR station plots. I think VTAR station plots will not work on Mac as well. It's an issue with SVG rendering.
I'm sorry, I must have missed where you got those four on the way.
So in the view
On the
menu,
view.
1 pane and 5 pane.
Oh, I got you.
Yes.
If it stops swatching out.
Or you can just select view 1 pane layout and just get rid of that whole side.
Question is, I didn't check the code. I first was before now. That's like, how can I put those in the red selected way?
You should be able to just right click any of the side views, swap out like that.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
I'm kind of stuck in this really weird place. Because, I don't know. So how do I get
Is that whoops.
And whoops.
All right, so what I would do is issue the command.
And what is the second?
Dash. That's right. It's gonna match the string. Should kill that part. Oh, and actually, I think what it showed was the connectivity dialog was just behind the splash. So it wasn't hung, but it looked like it. Yeah.
So that's when we said I was put. So now I do that.
You can either just run K and So there's a few more menu options that I want us to be familiar with. Before any of these, before we were holding right click to bring up the product menu on any of these resources down the stack. We can also hold right click anywhere on the background of the map and bring up another menu. And this menu will be visible as long as you're holding down the right click button. And so we have hide and show map legends. We have a 2-panel and a 4-panel layout. Then we have options like skipping frames and sampling. So sampling and lat long readout are toggles. So we can just enable those. And right over the cursor, we're going to get a text readout of the parameters of the fields that are loaded in the view. So a little difficult to see because it's tied to the colors. You'll notice that top one is the surface temperature contour. So I'm going to change that color just to make it a little bit. So down the resource stack, right click, changes to gray. Well, that's gray yellow. Boom. Dodge and blue. There we go. Right. So we've got 3 fields loaded. And actually, I think it's doubled up. It's not showing pressure, which it should. Yeah, 17 knots, 78 degrees Fahrenheit at that particular location. So that's sampling enabled. It's toggleable with a hold right click again, right? And then there's a lat long readout, which is just going to append the lat long of the cursor position to that cursor sample. Makes it pretty convenient for interrogating grids.
Does the AWIPS actually dump the crosswalk somewhere?
Sorry?
What does it dump the crosswalk?
It sometimes does. That's a bad answer. There are logs in AWIPS.
They crashed it for 3 times.
Oh, wow, okay.
Maybe it just needs
Yeah, so there's a log directory. PWD, K data logs, console logs, and then the short name of the workstation machine, in my case, room 1411. We'll have a couple of logs. And these are really convenient if you do have a crash like that, either to go in and investigate or just send them to data support so that we can look at it. I think it's just a bunch of dots to look at. Yeah, performance log or things like that. Yeah, I really hate saying this, but crashes are part of AWIPS. I don't want it to be.
You had 3 already?
Yeah.
I had 3 logs released.
It could be a memory issue because these are 8 gigs of memory. That should be enough, and the paid client should be only using up to about 4 gigs. Question.
Yeah, is there a way to load data that isn't available on here?
So because it's a service-oriented architecture and we're tied to the cloud-based server, we cannot say just import a grid file in the Cave client and have it display. Like the IDB can do that, but Cave cannot. You really need to have access to the data server in order to ingest your own data. There is an import feature for things like shapefiles and GIS data, but not for, say, like raw METARs or GD or anything like that. No. You really have to have access to the server. So at a university or other setting where you have your own EDX server, you can do an NFS mount, which is kind of dangerous to allow students and everybody to have access to the server. But you can NFS mount a manual data ingest entry point, just a directory, that anybody can just copy a file over to, and that file will be ingested by the server and will be available to K.
Does that have, that has to have a certain format itself, or it can be?
There are some rules. There's some regular expressions that are either matching like the WML headers of the product or the file name. So anything with the to extension will be picked up by the group decoder. Anything with Virginia will be picked up by the satellite decoder. And then most of the plugins are tied to the WMO headers, recognizing what products are available. It makes it really easy for the LVM to ingest data products, but a little bit more difficult to do. So if you have a grid file that does not have grid extension, it will not recognize it. No, the big limitation on this program is you cannot just say open a grid file from a product menu, import a G file. All right, so the rest of this background hold right click menu, we looked at sampling and let line layout, right? 2-pane and 4-pane layout. So before we were creating multiple tabs to get a multiple pane view. This is an easy way to create multiple maps within the same tab. So I'm going to select a 2-pane layout, and it's just going to split it left and right.
I guess before we go on.
Oh, sure.
And maybe I'll do this later. In that previous layout, is there a way to just load all those extra same data at once so that when you're switching, you're kind of just looking at different views or whatever of your function?
Are you asking how to save multiple tabs?
No, in that 5-pane layout, you know, you can switch between views, but there was no data. Is there any way to like say, I want to load pretty much the same thing or some separate things in your
Oh, default set of data loaded when you start Cave. There is a way, and it is done through the localization perspective, which we'll get to this afternoon. It's a little cumbersome. It's not a simple menu option like set this panel to this bundle. It's a little cumbersome, but we can cover that. All right, so we have a 2-panel layout and a 4-panel layout, and this will split them out. And these are geographically tied, right? So zooming in on one is going to zoom in on the other, and mousing over one is going to show a cursor position in the same spot in the other. But notice this is 2 maps in 1 tab rather than 2 tabs. And similar, hold right click and switch back to a single pane layout. And then also switch to a 4-pane layout, like so. So this can be a little hairy when you're loading data. And I believe if we just load up, say, a grid field, it will load to all panes, which is not really what we do. There's another right-click menu option that says load to this panel. So third one down, you have multiple panels up. And if I select that on the top left quadrant, see a L in the bottom left corner of this pane. It says this is where the data will be loaded, whatever I'm loading. So I can go back to the menus, say models, bundle, and it will just load to that single pane. Then I can say right click over here, load to this panel, select another model, different bundle, load just that pane. Question?
I'm having problems.
So this is a good time for a break, 10:20. You guys feel free to grab coffee, break. And
We had it 2 and and then I took 4 and and then the single panel I had before with data. I may have chosen wrong. I may have done something first. I had data in here. I may have done this panel and when I click.
like I said, this is the reality of it sucks. I just stand up here and tell you that it's acceptable, and I don't think it's acceptable. But, Can you try to recreate that?
Key binding constant.
That's fine.
Okay.
As long as it's not the. Recreate that.
Well, this didn't happen before.
It never switched to a format.
It never got before. Alright, so then also, like, if I have the data loaded here, how do we load data into each of these?
Right, so hold right click menu on any of those panels and you'll notice an option.
Alright, we're,
So there's the real cursor, and
Yeah.
here's the geolocated cursor,
Yeah.
right?
I know, it's just, it's like,
So hold down right click and notice the load in this panel is cursor down.
okay, so load to that now.
Notice the
Now,
symbol. So any data loads you can use to go to that table.
okay, alright.
And just switch that. And
Okay. So now I'm gonna start playing around with this to see if we run into any more issues. And boy, it looks pretty good.
So I think it might have been a memory. Because I had 4 panels open besides those 4 there.
A lot of data loaded.
Yeah, a lot of data, yeah. And I think the upper limit is 6.1 gig or something.
Yeah, I think the JVMs are 4 to 4.5 gigs max memory, but the machines have 8, so it should handle it.
Somebody's here, right?
No, so we can survive. saw the picture yesterday.
Yeah, huh?
Yeah.
Was that the
Read the
World?
last five.
Was that the World Series? The
Yeah.
softball? Yeah, that was it. Final.
Say what?
That was the final.
It is, well, my alma mater, I mean, softball team are the champions. I supported them for all of 2 games.
Oh, so they won the third, they won their third. This year.
Yeah, or the third in 5 years.
Right, I thought it was 4, but,
They won in 2013 and then last year,
okay.
so it was back to back. I really don't like you right now. That was my call for. No, we don't really call for it still. It's not helpful. I have the best words. I got some words. Who's next guy? It's gonna be everything. Do you want to picture yourself on the belly for none of you how you do it that way? You need to walk 200 steps. Yeah, I don't know where we left that. I thought it was gonna have it work. There was some papers.
Oh.
Well, the index guys from downstairs are moving the meat. Okay. Yeah. Talk about that.
Probably different.
I'd like to get these clients if I can acquire meetings. Maybe it's an ad or something. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. It actually makes a little sense to me for this because well, guess what? That's not actually working with the CF conventions. So when you're in the road, we're going to put this together. Let's let me go downstairs.
Yeah, sounds good. Go ahead.
Well, I'll show you what I have with this. This is just temperature. Anything that's red is about 60, is about 70. And it's basically everywhere east of that.
If we had a pool.
It's like basically
It's dark in here.
anything in the US east of.
We can turn the lights on a little bit, and I'll just change the background color.
Okay.
It's a little easier.
Anywhere you are.
Kind of look, check out the color bars, like the labels up there. It's not accounted for.
The text is white.
Yeah.
This is what he's.
Left the user to imagine what the numbers might be.
So just out of curiosity, how long until the next break?
Lunch at noon.
I don't want to leave halfway through, but I might have.
I mean, trying to get over the basics, a lot of the different options that are in this,
Yeah.
and start going into plugins and data types and things like that. There is going to be a section on the localization perspective. Here's the thing though, there's a, let's do, if you just go to our Unidata AWIPS website, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And,
I might.
yeah. So documentation right here, it's going to open up an external site, GitHub pages, and there's cave user manual. Right? So
Okay.
this localization perspective is something that it is available through this menu here. And it's essentially a text editor that allows you to set user level configurations for everything involved in cave. So we're gonna go through some examples of this, but this is a good document to familiarize yourself with.
Yeah, because I would have no idea how to do any of this.
Yeah, it's a big,
If
it's a big program.
if I wasn't leaving today, I would be here for the entire time. But
No worries.
kind of.
All right, so I changed the background up here to white so you guys can see the display a little bit easier. That is in a hold right click background menu, set background color, halfway down, roughly, and it's just a color dialog like so. So I can make this really hideous, purple, whatever. I'll keep it as white so we don't have to have the light shut off in here. But notice things like color bars are not showing the actual text labels up here, so it's a little off there. All right, so I'm going to switch back to a single pane layout. Convenience. And yeah, notice a lot of these, I need to change the colors. Green is fine. I'm just going to make this kind of ugly so you guys can see it. All right, so you can see the text labels down here. Actually, I'll just turn off black. Oh. No. All right. No. That's a little better. So we've only been loading data to the view, and AWIPS Cave differentiates between data layers and map resource layers. Obviously, data changes with time, and map resources are static with time. There are two different stacks available. So what we're seeing down here is in data that are loaded into the view will be added to the stack, the bottom right. That hold right-click background menu anywhere on the map has an option up top for either hide legends or show map legends. So if we do hide legends, it's going to disappear the data stack versus show product legends, right? And then similarly, show map legends is going to show whatever maps are loaded to the view. Now the only map is called, or the default map, the only map loaded at this time is called state county boundaries. That's the world political or geopolitical boundary map. And similar to a data resource down in the stack, we can hold right click on that data source and we can change the line width, the color, things like that. So I'll change this to black and I'll increase the width to like so. There we go. So rather than having to hold right click and switch between product legends and map legends like so, we can also just right click on the background. Oh, actually, that will just hide it. Dang. That's changed. So right click on the background will just hide the stack or show the stack, and then map legends will require a hold right click to show map legends. So I'm going to zoom in on our area, Wisconsin, and it's a polar stereographic view, so it's kind of skewed a little bit for us. This map menu up top at the far right has a number of different geographic resources that are stored in a Postgres database on the server side. So everything that's available in this menu is tied to what's available on the server. These are toggleable, and you can see that the only map resource is loaded as state county boundaries, which has a check mark enabled. But from this, we can load quite a few different things. We have things like interstates, which load up anything that's considered a major interstate, and it has its default color and line style. It's an orange. It's loaded to the data stack down at the bottom right, called interstates. And similar to any other resource, we can hold right click and we can see the options that are available. There's a few different options that are new to us, and I'm going to go ahead and mute the products, unselect all three of those, and then go back to the map legends view. And notice we have some labeling going on. So I-43, I-94, Chicago, and we have an option for, say, label, which is defaulting to root, and label offset, things like that. Leave magnification, bump that up so we can actually see it. Yeah, just do like max. There you go. Giant numbers for the interstates. And they kind of jump around dynamically. With progressive disclosure, similar to most point data. But we can say like shade, label, we can say to like type versus like interstate to highway, things like that. Not too important, and I never really end up going in and configuring anything like interstates. But we can load up a number of different map resources. There's interstates and US highways, which is going to double up on the interstates that we've already loaded, but it's also going to load things like roads considered US highways. You'll see the updating down at the bottom right. It says retrieving interstates. And a little progress meter. It's retrieving these data from the remote server. And we also have point data, such as cities. So I want to load that up. And it's like we're all hitting the server at the same time. Give this a second. And actually, the interstates and US highways is a pretty large data set. So it's going to take a while.
Mine's been a couple minutes.
A couple of minutes is a little too long. That's a little too long. I wanted to bring cities up. So let me just clear all this out. Start a new tab. Maybe. Okay. Let's start again.
Once you retrieve the map, is that something that will just be stored locally?
It does get cached, yeah, in cave data, right. There's an option called Thin Client, which for the Weather Forecast Office enables forecasters outside the office to have a Windows machine, and they've enabled caching of data and map resources in Thin Client. And Unidata, we've enabled Thin Client mode for all cave clients, like it's default. I think it's wonderful behavior. So that's why when I first loaded up, say, the 20-kilometer GFS surface temperatures and winds, it took a few seconds. It took about 10 seconds to load it. And then the next time I loaded it up, it was just instantaneous. It just retrieves it from the local cave data directory. Okay. So hopefully that didn't require you guys to restart. All right, so I wanted to load up a few more interstates, cities. There's quite a few different geographic boundaries. We have things like time zones. There's volcano locations, warning areas. There's a day-night terminator, which will load up the current position of the sun. If we zoom out, plus the day-night terminator, and if we switch to say like a world view, we've got some coloration issues there. That's interesting. The CED, Mercator, that's better. So current position of the sun plus the day-night terminator. It's sunrise in Hawaii right now. There's a few like aviation, like air routes, traffic control, low altitude, high altitude routes, rivers and hydro, so drainage basins, like major rivers, lakes, RFC boundaries, sounding locations. That's doubled up. That's funny. WSR88D location. So yeah, you get an idea of what's available here. There we go. So there's WSR88D, and they're just kind of difficult to see. So I'm going to up the magnification and change the colors again. Black. There we go. And cities is going to be white. So on my view, it's visible right now. I'm going to change this to a dark gray. There we go. And again, I'm going to change the font size. Make that a little more visible. So density for these point-based map resources is going to determine the progressive disclosure of that resource. So on cities, if I put this up to max, it's just going to fill the entire thing in. Well, it's a little too cluttered. That doesn't look so good, right? So we want to find like 1, 1.5, something like that, suitable, aesthetically pleasing distribution of city names. So what you'll notice is if you clear, it's not going to remove map resources. Again, this is the difference between a data resource and a map resource, static versus time-based. So in order to remove all these, we can either just close the tab and open a new one, or hold right-click and we can say, oops, not hold right-click, do unload each of these. I believe, thought we had an unload all. All right. So over in the WFO map, I believe that cities are enabled by default. I'm going to just close this out and start a new one. Let's say WFO. No. I guess not. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and load an image. We haven't looked at satellite yet. Or in the satellite menu, something to notice about these menus is that first entry, the dashed line, it allows you to tear off any of these menus. So if I select this option right above the first product, it'll pop that menu out, and I can just put it over here on the left. So it's kept here. And you can do this with pretty much every sub-menu that's available. So it gets kind of hairy trying to find a single radar station under radar next rad stations. Load up. It alphabetizes them and groups them. I'm just waiting here. So what I wanted to lead you guys through was load up, say, ooh, that crashed. All right. Load up, say, the GOES imager visible, and we can start playing with color maps and modifying these color maps and saving them in the Cave Data Sync. Are you guys seeing these UI freezes that I am? Like loading a menu and it just completely freezes and then shuts down? I know you are. Anybody else having this problem?
So bad.
Okay. Set the background color. All right, so load up a visible, let's do IR water vapor just so we can get some coloration. So goes imager 11 micron IR. And we have a default color map that is applied. Again, that's the base localization. I'll change my colors. All right, so when we're dealing with models, we're looking at either contour or images. When we're dealing with like METAR obs and synoptic obs, dealing with point data. Satellite imagery is going to have some imaging and color map capabilities available in that right-click menu. So either of these two options, holding down right-click on the data resource in the stack and going to imaging, is going to bring up our brightness, contrast, and transparency and our interpolation. So you can notice the interpolation toggling it on and off. And then there's another option for interpolating colors, which has a very minor effect on the display, and I generally keep that off. But interpolating the image can sometimes improve its readability, but we can edit the default color map that's available. The name is given at the top of the dialog. So I'm clicking on this edit goes 13 IR, and it's called SAT IR Sira, infrared default, and say color map builder from top to bottom. That's one way to customize it. The second button down here with the actual name of the color map is going to open a submenu with all of the color maps that are available. And so they're grouped by type, and you can see that the name is SAT IR Sira, and that is the directory structure here. So under SAT, under IR, under Sira, IR default, that's the default for infrared satellite imagery. And just changing that to say the GEMPAC color map for IR, blues and oranges. We can change that to satellite gridded data. I mean, there's a number of color maps that are available. So there's a couple of different options here. I'll slow down. I know there's a lot going on here. Holding right click and going to imaging is going to bring up this first dialog that allows you to set the color map and then the brightness, contrast, and transparency and interpolation. There's also this option called just change color map, which is a simpler submenu just for the color map. So we're not dealing with things like transparency and contrast, but we do have the min and max values of the color map applied here. And we can go to edit colors, and again, that will modify the presently loaded color map. So this isn't an interface that I particularly like, and I don't do a lot of work in this, but occasionally it can be very useful to, say, select different ranges. So we can drag, say, the top and the bottom here. If I do something like a right click, let's see, oh, there, a left click on anywhere the top half of this color map, it's going to change the top. If I click on the bottom, it's going to change the bottom. So let's say red at the bottom and green at the top, right? There's this interpolate button down at the bottom left. And this will interpolate between the two colors that we're selecting. Again, this dotted line is going to divide the color map. If we select interpolate, I believe it'll be green down here right at the top. It'll just be a two-color interpolation reset for this entire color map, like so. Obviously, that looks ugly for infrared satellite imagery, but it gives you an idea of how we use this interface. We can drag these small markers in and say, change colors down here, either manually or selecting with the right mouse click button. I'll just change it to white. We can select interpolate again, and we'll interpolate based on the limits of these two markers. So they've made available this interface for customizing a color map. But this is a bit cumbersome. It sure beats editing XML. We can save these color maps, and what that'll do is it'll overwrite, it'll create a user localization version of this, whatever color map was loaded to edit here. So this is called grid, stat gridded data. And if we go and look in on the server, I'll have a user localization version of that. I'm not modifying the base, the default, that is still available to everybody else. But I do believe that since we all have the same username, that if you now loaded gridded data on your machines, it would come up with this ugly red, green, blue that I just haphazardly created. Oh, Water Vapor has its own color maps available. Something I didn't mention that I should is for loop controls. When you load up a new resource, I'll just set to like 100 frames. Using the left and right keys on the keyboard can toggle through the frames very quickly. Gives you an idea of which frames have loaded and which haven't. So back and forth like so, pretty rapidly. And if we're just animating through the controls up here, I believe the speed is 8, whatever arbitrary number that is. But it can go up to, say, 10, just somewhat faster, but still not as fast as looping manually with the left or right keys. So a lot of these satellite images are interpolated by default, and with a hold right click on the data resource, we can just turn off interpolation and go see the actual pixel values, brightness, temperature. For sampling, oops, and there's the white background. It screwed me up. Sampling, and it's showing the pixel value, brightness, temperature, 0 to 255. Okay, you probably noticed this goes 16 provisional product submenu. We do not have these data ingesting just yet on our EDX cloud server, but for this workshop, this EDX test server that we're connecting to, we're ingesting the NOAA port and other feed for GOES-R, GOES 16. There's CONUS sectors, there's full disk, and there's 2 mesoscale sectors. So we have 16 channels available. And for CONUS view, 16 channels are at the top of the menu, and there's a sub-menu for the full disk imagery. And then there's the RGB composites for icing and the 2 daytime composites. These are created through multi-channel shading of multiple channels using OpenGL scripting language. This is something that does not work on Mac. Mac actually is tied to a really old version of GLSL, GL scripting language, that will not support this. So yeah, load these up. And again, these are provisional products. These are not operational just yet. These get distributed as sectors, tiles, and so it's likely that we will not see complete coverage. We might see some blinking sectors that are missing or still to be ingested. But let's see, a lot of data. Is this loading up for you folks? Yeah. You guys seeing some missing sectors and some blinking? Oh, yeah. Okay. Hopefully you guys didn't try to load 100 frames like I did. So I'm going to bump that down to 10. If you sample, if you enable the background, hold right-click menu, and enable sampling. You'll see the 3-channel values, the blending of the multiple channels in order to get the product. So, waiting. Load this time. It's blinking when you're holding the left or right keys down in order to cycle through the frames. It can be hard on the eyes and induce seizures in some people, actually. So. Try this again. Say, compass data composite. All right, well, hopefully that loaded for you guys. I don't want to sit around waiting for it to load for me. I think this may be affecting us all trying to download the same data set to different workstations. All right, so for these full disk images, we've made available a new map called Goes East Full Disk, the top left, under the scales drop down. That should give you pretty complete coverage of, say, load like channel 2, viz. There we go, that's a little better. So you can see some effects of the coming in, that's odd.
They're doing some work on it because I'm getting the same thing on my images.
Yeah. And again, this is provisional. So not only do we see some like missing sectors, but also I think the color mapping is still a little bit off on some of these products. But zooming in, you'll notice the progressive resolution of the graphics. I believe the CONUS is 6 kilometers or 10 kilometers, something like that. Or sorry, not CONUS. The full disk is supposed to be 6. Okay. Yeah. So zooming in, say on the Gulf Coast storms, if we don't see a status at the bottom right saying creating tiles, and that means we're at full res. So that's a little pixelated. We can overlay, say, the CONUS channel 2 on top of the full disk channel 2 and really see the differences in the resolution between the two products. So notice this creating image tiles. And if I zoom in, you can see the pixelation. Just turn off the back. There we go. There we go. So there's an effect of some of the color mapping. That may be a calibration issue with the sensor. I don't think this is an effect of AWIPS. This is an effect of
It's
being
the processing
provisional.
that's being done on it before it goes out on AWIPS.
Right. So you see these like really high values of brightness temperature are not being colored correctly.
Reflectance values greater than 1 are they're marked as missing.
Maybe on this is, can you actually turn off the thing that's blank? So you have like 10 frames and like first one's blank.
Yes.
Turn it off.
Yes, absolutely. So like this one, right? Got the bad frame. We don't want that. I can hold right click and say skip this frame, like so. And it'll just disappear from our loop. Yeah, the rendering of images is done in a tile-based manner, similar to, say, Google Maps and other mapping applications, where if we're zooming in and it is not rendered the full res, I'll zoom in really. Let's go somewhere else. Zoom in, say, like way out here. The bottom right, it'll start rendering new tiles. I'm trying to trigger it. But there it is, creating image tiles down here. So this is the GL operation. It's the graphics card that's doing all the rendering, and it will not render a part of the view until you're actually zoomed in at that resolution in that area. So I did mention the pull-off menus where we can just grab those and sticky them. They will stay in the foreground of the application, which is pretty convenient. There's mesoscale sectors, as well as CONUS and full disk. And we do not have the drive motion winds right now, and we do not have the GOES Lightning Mapper going. However, there are plugins available for that when they do come online. So the mesoscale. There we go. Mesoscale. And there's the example of like sampling the multi-channel color composites. So at Unidata, we work with SOCC to produce area files of global composites, both in a rectilinear and a multi-ID projection, available at 20 and 30 kilometer resolutions. These are Mercatus images that are, we've modified the Mercatus decoder in AWIPS in order to support them. So they're available right here in the satellite menu, and say the global rectilinear water vapor 20 kilometer. Looks pretty good on the full disk image. There's also a multi-ID projection available that shows you there is the goes east and west current operational product submenu. There's the 10 kilometer composites. There's the national composites. Northern Hemisphere composites, and then all of the regional imagery that is available on NOAAPort is available in these submenus as well. A few other products. We've got ASCAT winds, polar orbiter, scatterometer. It's going to plot these as point data, as wind barbs, and color them based on their magnitude. There we go. Swaths. The NPP Veers near constant contrast product is available, and it's plotted as a composite of multiple channels. Go. So you can see the swaths of the polar orbiter and zoom in and see like the day-night channel. I guess this is what it is. All right, so another product that is unique to Unidata AWIPS are the FNX-RED composites, which are generated with a GEMPACK routine to composite the level 3 radar into a GINI image. So it's actually a radar product that's decoded by the satellite decoder because we're spoofing a satellite product. Under the radar menu, they are available in the second section here. So there's 4 products currently available on this server with plans to add the DA, DTA, and OHA precip accumulation products. And these are CONUS view, 1 kilometer resolution, and they are interpolated by default. So turn off this interpolation, we can see the actual pixel values of the compositing. There's 2 different radar composites available, and in addition to the FNX-RED composites, which are generated every 5 minutes and are ingested as satellite GINI images, there is a cave compositing function for multiple radars. So we'll overlay both of these and compare. We've got some storms down in Florida. I'm going to clear this out and start with this second section called NexRad Mosaic rather than FNX-RAD composites. So each of these products will have a submenu that is tied to a region. And I want you guys to be aware that the second to last option here is the National Mosaic out of N0Q. This is going to load up roughly 200 radar stations. And that's a lot of data, and it's very graphics intensive. So I would not recommend the National Mosaic right now. Let's just try the Gulf Coast or the Southeast. This is querying from the server the individual site radars within this region and compositing them on the fly with the graphics card. And if we zoom in, we can see some of these compositing effects, these very unnatural looking edge effects. But again, this is just a single product that's been composited very quickly. So let's compare this to, actually, I'm going to clear that out. I don't want N0Q, I want DHR. So DHR Southeast. There we go. And I want to overlay that with the DHR FNX-RAD composite. So it dropped the FNX-RAD NexRCon mode name for it to the bottom, so it's hidden right now. You can barely see it. If we toggle each of these, we can see the difference. Okay, so it's underneath, right? So the top level is non-interpolated and the bottom level is interpolated. So I want to turn off interpolation on the bottom level, like so. There we go. And just zoom in and get an idea of the coverage here. And notice timestamps are slightly different. So 1512Z versus 1510Z. We go back and forth with our keys, keypad. Well, I have a single frame loaded, right? So it's frames here, so I need to, let's just up that to like 5. It's a good idea to keep the number of frames low when you're loading the site radar composites because it's a lot of data. I'll load it and try to get something close. There we go, 1500Z. And that gives you an idea of difference between them. So yeah, it's 2 different compositing routines. No surprise that the product is going to be slightly different. The color maps are also a little bit different. Up at the top, you can see the scales. We can sample. If we enable that right-click sample option and just hold it over a single pixel, then some of the differences. So yeah, 2 different products trying to represent the same thing. Just be aware of the differences. So one of these really neat composites that we're creating is the HHC, the Hybrid Hydrometeor Classification, which when we're sampling will actually show the string name. Let's do that, of the type. So like grapple, hail, rain, heavy rain, big drops. It's like wet snow, dry snow, things like that. All right, so this is compositing. And so this whole menu right here is composites. But the next red stations and terminal Doppler, where the radar stations have their own submenus. Hope this doesn't freeze me again. Yeah, they're alphabetized, they're grouped, and then alphabetized. So this is not a very user-friendly interface for selecting a single site radar. So if I wanted to go down to like KOAX, my gosh, I got to keep my cursor over it, and where are we? KOAX, like so. And then here's the actual KOAX menu. And this is why it's convenient to click that top dash line and sticky these out if I want to load multiple products from, say, KOAX. It's also the reason that for some localization sites, these menus are available up here at top. So this menu that I got through radar stations, the alphabetized list popped out, is the same exact menu that's up here, KOAX. And from here, we can load all the tilts that are available. On our server, it's only the first tilt, so 0 and 0.5 degrees. And this will just load up single site radars for that one position, so KOAX, like so. All right, so that's not very convenient, which is why I wrote this plugin, Next-Rad Displays. The first option under radar, it's going to overlay selectable radar stations with the DHR composite that we're creating with Genpack on the back end. So clicking any of these stations, you'll see the cursor change, and selecting those will create a 2-pane layout with some default map resources, such as interstates and cities, with reflectivity on the left and velocity on the right. So I inadvertently clicked something that's not very interesting, and I want to go back down to Florida and make these like really big and white. Okay. Go to Florida. There we go. Loop those. And here's the raw level 3 radar files. So no longer compositing. We're just looking at a single scan. We sample the radar product. Keep that static. Well, that's difficult to see, but it gives us a string that says velocity and reflectivity, height above ground level, the angle of the radar beam, and the reflectivity. Yeah, it looks like it's giving distance and direction, as well as height. It's pretty nice. So there's a similar interface for the N-Sharp plugin for mapping or drawing up radar diagrams, QT log Ps. The plugin is available in the toolbar up top, N-Sharp. Orange and NC data. And you get a dialog that pops out. And if you're familiar with Nmap2 and N-Sharp from Genpack days, it's a similar interface. So it's not the most well-designed interface, but this first button load is going to bring up another dialog. And this is really tiny to see, so I hope this is working fine for you guys in front of you. There's 2 sources of upper air data, UAir and buffer UA, and then times that are available. And based on those times, we'll have markers over the array op station. Those They're selectable, and we'll bring up an N-sharp upper air diagram. It'll be full view. Let's say Denver. Second. And it takes up the full view of the map, which I don't particularly like. So I tend to drag this over to the left or the right, like so. There we go. The N-sharp window, the profile can be zoomed in, dragged around, similar to a plan map view. Same with the photograph, we can zoom in, get a little bit more detail. These font sizes are really tiny, so I'm not going to attempt to read this stuff out. But these controls over on the right, I'm not going to go too much into this, but we can page through a number of the thermodynamic parameters and indexes and things like that with these previous and next buttons here. And again, this is adapted from the original N-sharp GEMPAK software. The idea is they didn't want to upset the workflow for a forecaster. We wanted it to be seamless transition as possible, as they say, black box transition. So a lot of the clunkiness and sort of the ugliness of the interface of the original AWIPS 1 and GEMPAK has been ported to AWIPS 2. So these upper air profiles are also available through the upper air menu. At top option and sharp soundings, we'll just load the same window over here within the radar. So I'm localized to Omaha, so there's conveniently a menu item for my single site right at the top, but it's regionalized. And any of these will select, say, Mexico. Close this all out. Try again. Let's just say, yeah. Select any one of these, and it pops up a N-sharp window like so. Upper air plots are available in their own submenu, and this is just going to point them as plot them as point data. So, like so, just have a plan view upper air station plot. There we go. Pretty simple. Again, we can change the magnification and make this a little easier to read. There we go. And similar for surface observations. So under surface, we have, say, winds, we have METAR plot, we have mean sea level pressure plot, some precip plots, and then synoptic. So say METAR station plot is going to be a single color standard surface ob. Oh, like so. There's one that just shows surface winds for METARs. We can give you a convenient sort of view of surface wind barbs. Nothing too interesting. A lot of calm winds. And then the METAR, the 24-hour, 6-hour, 3-hour, and 1-hour are its own plugin that colors the values based on precipitation amounts. So the 24-hour products colored from white to orange to red, which for me, I like how they stand out when you overlay it on something like radar, rather than green, which makes sense for precipitation. It would just blend into the background colors of the actual radar file. So watches and warnings are plotted as polygons. And in the second section, we've got convective watches. Looks like there's something out there. Maybe not.
Yeah, this might be a real pain, but because it's so hard to see the menus, could you just go, could you step through with words what the menu items are as you're doing it?
Sure, yes, okay. So convective watches, I don't think that's going to load because it's been 0400. But all warnings, if we select all warnings, it's going to load everything from this second section down here. So we're divided by thunderstorm and tornado warnings, flood warnings, marine and extreme wind. It's giving it weather advisories, weather plots. We can just load all of those with a single click here. And they're colored according to the operational specs of these warnings. So again, difficult to read up here. Very tiny font in these machines, but let's stop the animation. Yeah, like so. And up that magnification. There we go. Gives you the valid time and the through time. So beginning and end of the warning overlaid next to the polygons. Similar to flash flood, advisories and warnings. Extreme wind warnings, which aren't showing any.
Do you have some switch on? Basically, when I did 4 warnings, it loaded all the flood warnings somewhere.
Did you have any other data loaded before that that could time match it? Yeah. That's possible. If there has not been a thunderstorm or tornado warning in, say, the last 30 minutes or something, it's a good point I should make about time matching with these data files. So if I loaded up a radar image, DHR composite, this is every 5 minutes per frame. So if we're looping through, we can see the time at the bottom right, 1350, 1355, 1400. This is now, so this is the only data resource loaded, and it is the dominant resource. And everything that I load to the map from this point forward will be time matched to this data product. So if I put, say, surface winds or warnings on top, let's do all warnings on top of DHR. It'll time match to the 5-minute increments for the DHR composites. Start looping, and we don't see the flashing of the warning polygons disappearing as rapidly as they were when we just loaded it without a really fine resolution image.
Can you reset your time matching?
Yep.
Or once you load, you're done?
Yep. Nope, absolutely, we can reset it. All right, so if I cleared all this out, removed all data, and I loaded up the same all warnings again, it'll be time matched to whatever frequency of the warnings that have been issued, which is not a very, well, visually it gives you an idea of what's going on around CONUS, but it's not a very good strategy for time matching. It's a lot easier to have, say, a satellite image or surface observations, which are binned, say, every 20 minutes, satellite images every 15 or 30 minutes, radar every 5, and then overlay the polygons on top of that. So you can try an example of multiple images to give you an idea of this time matching. So I'm going to load DHR again. Again, that's every 5 minutes. And let's say goes imager visible, which I think is every 15. The order with which these are loaded is very important here. So I loaded DHR first, and I loaded imagery, visible imagery second. So visible imagery is overlaying on DHR. I want to flip those. So in that right-click menu on either of these products, I can either grab visual imagery and move it down, or DHR and move it up, like so. That's what I want to see. All right. So what we notice is the time matching, right? Watch the increment of time down here. And DHR is on top, so it's visible on top of the visible satellite. And it's incrementing every 5 minutes. And then watch the time increment for the visible satellite. It's every 30 minutes, not 15. So it's at 15:45 past the hour for this goes visible satellite imagery. Hey, thanks for coming. Yeah, thank you. So regardless of the order that these are in the stack, that I'm manipulating them up and down, the time matching is still based on the first product that I loaded, DHR, so every 5 minutes. But I can switch that and I can make the radar image time matched to the satellite image. I believe time match basis. So holding down right click on visible imagery, we have time match basis up at the top, and select that, and that just flips it immediately. So we're no longer incrementing every 5 minutes. And look at the time on the radar. So we're not going to show every radar frame here, right? We're going to miss out on quite a few of them because it's only going to increment every 30 minutes tied to visible satellite imagery.
Is there anyone there that actually shows a menu of what's loaded and what you could get in each of them?
No, there's not. There's just this data stack. This is the tool they developed for that. It's like it's rendering tiles again. All right, so why is it rendering tiles? Because I loaded 36 frames by default DHR, right? 36 frames times 5 minutes goes back a certain amount of time. But 36 frames times 30 minutes goes back an even further amount of time. So it had to re-query these data files from the server and then re-render them. So yeah, zoom back in and loop. And yeah, we're no longer going to see radar composite looping every 5 minutes per frame. So very important to keep track of matching is set to which product is the dominant.
But like my show map was, I don't know how to do it.
Sorry.
It's okay.
The reason why it's doing completion.
Okay. Yes.
Makes sense.
All right, so couple more topics about time matching and time frames within the CAVE system. I mentioned at the beginning this morning, this menu here, fifth item over, that defaults to valid time sequence. And essentially valid time sequence and latest are the same thing. If we switch this over to inventory though, and then load a product, say like satellite imagery, we will be prompted. I mean, the menus are still going to show the latest available, 1515 for imagers, but we'll be prompted to select an actual time that's available on the server. So we don't have a very long data archive on this server. It's only been ingesting data since yesterday. But this is a way that we can go back and just select a single frame, load it. And this is true for all jobs and whatnot. So that's one way to control sort of looking at archive data. It's not a robust system, so we can't say like load a case study from years and years ago. This is a real-time system that is slowly being adapted to handle archive and case study data. But if we loaded, say, models, our inventory would bring up both the inventory time and the forecast time, so the cycle and the forecast time of the product. So for GFS, we've got 2 model runs, and we've got forecast times up to 240 hours. So we can select a single time from those, right?
So you can't grab, 7 times or something. It's just one.
No, I don't
one
think that's a
inventory type.
multi-select, no. Oops, not that one. No, it's not a multi-select. However, the number of frames that we're going to request, so that was one thing to change that. The number of frames is going to determine, so actually, just load that and see frame through inventory. So again, this isn't a very robust sort of archive or case study loading tool. However, there is another way that we can modify the time that we're looking at. So down here at the bottom, this is essentially a CAVE system time. And this is by default, it's live. So we're at 1634Z. This is selectable. And I think it's a double click. Yeah, a double click will bring up this time dialog, and it's set to use current real time. We can also set it to time. So we can set this to a few hours ago or yesterday, or however far back our data goes. So let's say just 2 hours ago, right? 1400, and click OK. We can say freeze time at this position or not. Meaning, if I set this to 1434, click OK, it's gonna increment through time, through real time, but it's going to be offset by 2 hours. So let's just say freeze at this position. Click OK. And notice text box down here turns red. So we've adjusted it. It's no longer real time within the CAVE system. Now, I no longer want to load through inventory. I want to go back to valid time sequence up at the top, or latest. What this means is the CAVE system time is now 2 hours in the past. So the latest available data is going to be up until that time. So we basically just roll back time by 2 hours within CAVE. And any of these products that we're loading up, they should load, again, I think the text will not update back to the 2 hours. Some of these look like they are, 1434. If we load imager visible, that should load up to, it should load the 20 frames or 40 frames or however many I'm indicating up to this artificially set CAVE time. So there we go, 1415. Make sure that's the last one available. Yep. So here's 20 frames up until this time that we set 2 hours ago. So that's another way to modify. This is this is used with the weather event simulator, which is not part of the Unidata release yet, but we're working with the Learning Decision Training Branch to get their code integrated with ours and make this available to universities. But this is one of the ways that we can deal with case study data. If we have the case studies on the server, then we can set this cave time back, say months or years. And it's the real time. We would set the option to say not freeze at the time, and then we could actually be forecasters, say 2 years ago, and watching the data come in real time. Obviously, that's a big part of Learning Decision Training Branch is training forecasters on like monumental case studies, but getting them to do it the whole data set, but in real time as things are coming in, the decisions that have to be made. All right. So reset that. I think that should reload the latest available. Yeah. So it just went up to. No, it didn't. Okay. All right, so a few more things to touch on. And again, there's a lot to cover in this, and it's a struggle for me to put it into one day. There's about 700 plugins all told in the AWIPS system. We haven't looked at the preferences at all. Over in the Cave menu in the far top left, there is a preferences, and the third option down is localization. It's going to show the current server and the current site that we are localized to. There's an option to prompt for these settings on startup so that every time that you start Cave, it will prompt you to enter in or confirm the server and the site. There's a restart button for when these are modified. And then there's a few configurations for, say, performance, for the mouse, left click, right click, appearance, things like that. This isn't something that we go into too much. Really won't be modifying this too often. Product browser and the data types that are available through it. Disable those and save. And there we go. Over in the file menu, we have some import and some export options. For import, we can import images, either just as background or just straight up as the image overlay, geotiff, point data, and GIS data and shapefiles. For GIS and shapefiles, say, we have a dialog that comes up, and we can browse the directory. It's going to open the system file manager. I don't have any shapefiles to load, but I'm going to download a couple really quickly. So let's say I'm struggling with memory here. All right, so if you guys can open a browser window and go to the SPC homepage, www.spc.noaa.gov, I think. All right, so we want to navigate to Convective Outlook, second option up top, and day one. And you'll notice right up here, just to the right of that pre-version link, is a day one shapefile that we can download. That is going to be a zip file, and it should download into the standard downloads directory. So you may not even have to unzip it. I can't remember if this works with zipped up shapefiles or not. We probably have to unzip it, but I'm going to give it a shot anyway. In that dialog for GIS data and shapefile, if you browse to the download directory, it should show up. Selectable. What's that?
It was grayed out on mine.
Grayed out. Okay, so on the command line, we want to go into CE/downloads. LS, there's our file, and just unzip. And then tab, it's the only file in that directory, and it will dump all the shape files, DVF, SHX, and projection files into that directory. So, got our categorical, hail, significant hail, tornado, and wind, right? And with everything uncompressed in that directory, and it's just an unzip command on that single zip file. And then import downloads. All right, so it's grayed out, but that's okay because we just want to have a directory selected. Again, this is a directory, not a file. So we want to say OK here, and then connect. There we go. So any shapefile that's in that directory, we can connect and disconnect like so. It's kind of funny. Can be loaded. So the categorical, just import like so. It's a very rudimentary import. It's not going to color shade them like we see on the SBC website. It's not multi-select, so.
So how can you export? Not save the image as something, but export it.
Right. So there's a KML export, and then there's image creation, screenshots, and animations. Let's do that, and then we'll break for lunch here in just a sec. So these shapefiles are loaded as data resources, and they are available in the stack, bottom right. If that's not available, just right-click in the background until it is. And we can do like crop shape, which I don't want to deal with. I don't think I want to deal with that. I just want to upload it. Get it out of here. All right, so you asked about exporting. There is no way to say take the entire grid and just export it to like grid or something like that. The system just isn't designed for that. It's really about exporting the polygons and the points and the images in either KML, KMZ, or screenshots. So we can load up, say, surface temperature and wind again from the GFS 20. Here we go. And two options in the file menu for save image or save KML.
Yeah, the problem with save images will, for me at least, it saves also the box that says okay and.
Yes. Okay. All right. So let me get to that in a second. Yeah. For the KML, it's going to save it to a zipped KML file, KMZ. You have the option of selecting the products that are available in the stack. So anything that's a data resource loaded to the current view will be available over here and selected by default. And we can select all frames, current frames, or frames, be specific with them. Export hidden, meaning if there's a resource that's been muted, that is not being shown, but it's still loaded. We can export the map, we can shade the earth, we can show the background tiles. Just go ahead and say export all frames like so. And we'll run. And it's just in my home directory called cave export.kmz. There we go. So again, the default name is going to be in your home directory, cave export.kmz, and I believe that we can just unzip this file. And it's given a directory name. You can go in there and see. All right, so PNGs, and then it's like an idea of so I don't want to do this. These KMZ files are very easy to import into applications like ArcGIS or Google Earth, Google Maps, things like that. Screenshots, save image, just above save KML. We have similar options. So we have a default export location under AWIPS2 export, no longer under home directory, but it's going to be AWIPS2 export and then your username. And then screen capture, it's time-stamped. And we can say include product date time in the file name or not. We can select all current or number of frames. And then we have an option to animate them or not. So if I selected all and left the export location as the default, select OK. It's going to say the directory doesn't exist. Do you want to create it? Yes. Oh, that's great. You don't have permission, do we? Okay. So rather than AWIPS2 export, just change that to home. We'll drop the PNG file into our home directory. So just a minor change there. And it'll run through. It animates all frames that are loaded, and it takes a screenshot of each. And then notice the bottom right, saving image with the progress meter. Now I'm in home directory, do a long list ordered by time, and there's our frames, 41 frames, right? Okay, open this in browser and just do home yes 2017. Look at these, and they are a straight up screen capture of the dimensions of the window and anything that's loaded to the window. So if I drag this window over and made it vertical like so and ran that process again, the resolution of the image would match the resolution of the map view within Cave here. There's another option. Let me keep this skinny and try again with save image to animate them. Say all and select animate and leave the delay and the dwell times as default and just run this again. Format selected is not valid. Do you want to change it to GIF? Yes. Oh yeah, I need to change the directory again. Sure. Yes. And then it runs through again. Save the image. And that's done. Navigate back. And there's a new file down at the bottom. So the frames exported were roughly like 250 to 300 kilobytes. The animation, 2.5 megabytes. That is the size of the window again. So it's switched vertically. question you asked was if we exported a single frame.
It takes the dialog box as well.
Yeah. So current, and if I leave that dialog over the map view and select OK, right? Well, it didn't for me, no, but it did for you, yeah. I've seen this happen before, and I thought it was fixed. Because the dialog disappears before the off-screen rendering is performed. But that wasn't always the case. So if you can reproduce that, I'd love to know how.
What is it? Just give me the computer. Yeah, here you go.
Did it work?
Yeah, it worked.
Meaning it captured the dialog window in the screenshot.
Let's do it again. Look here, I can file. If I take the link outside.
Interesting. Let's try this. Okay, yeah, it did. Weird. Spread it up the same way twice. All right, yep, something to be aware of is yikes, that's not good. All right. All right, something to be aware of. Yep. All right, so hopefully this is the morning session has been a good introduction to the capabilities of Cave, a lot of the menu options, how to navigate around the difference between data resources and map resources, a little bit of import, export, a little bit of playing with the data products. Throw some questions at me from this morning, from up until now, because for the afternoon, we're going to go into a couple of more perspectives, and we're going to be editing some configuration files. So any questions you guys have before lunch? There is a user's guide, yes. So if you go to the Unidata website, or you just simply Google AWIPS or AWIPS 2, you'll find us up at the top, right? So Unidata AWIPS, and then there's documentation, top left, first link. There's some install guides, installing Cave, installing EDEX. We're not dealing with EDEX at all. But yeah, if you go to documentation, you'll find the AWIPS user manual. It's hosted on GitHub pages. Menu over on the left. Cave user manual covers a lot of what we're doing here. So say like D2D perspective, the resource stack, the left and right click menus that are available, animations about how to do sampling, modifying color maps, things like that. Maps, views, and projections. We looked a little bit at this. We didn't go into new projections just yet, but saving loading bundles, N-sharp, volume browser. Yep, we'll touch on some of this in the afternoon. We're going to look at the localization perspective and start modifying things. Basically, anything that's available in the menu system of Cave, all those top menus and all the products can be customized to your user account or your workstation account, which is pretty neat. So you can completely customized cave without disturbing, say, the person next to you or the person in any other office. That's the benefit of this hierarchical localization system, with user workstation, desk, and so on. Yep. I think we can break for lunch. It's just about noon. So I want to start back at 1:30, 1:20, something like that.
120 sounds good, or 130, whatever.
Okay.
So for the sake of performance, you're mentioning all those models that are not yet on in Mac and Windows version. So you do strongly recommend Linux models.
Yeah, Linux primarily, yes. The weather service has a Windows client that is very limited functionality. It doesn't offer the national centers perspective or the localization perspective. They call it the thin client, which means more than just a limited set of plugins. It's actually like data caching on the client side. And, they do some like off-screen rendering or something like that. But anyway, yes, the Windows and Mac clients from Unidata right now are not fully featured. They do work, and you can load most grids and most satellite imagery, and a lot of the menu items and data interrogation is the same. But the client-side Python stuff, especially the derived parameters, does not work yet. I've got a working version in development, and I'm hoping I can get it out soon.
But if it's going to continue, then there will be a disparity in functionality forever. So.
Yeah, that's possible.
It's fine.